Hey everybody, David Minns from G4 Guitar School in Lake Forest here with another video lesson. And in this lesson today we're going to be taking a look at a rhythm pattern. And this rhythm pattern is called swung eighth notes. Now the swung eighth note rhythm pattern is related back to a triplet pattern, which we should know before we take on the swung eighth note. Okay, so if you haven't got as far as the triplet pattern yet, then check with me and we'll get you ready for that, and then we can move on to this one. Having said that, if we've done the triplet pattern, let's just review that before we go any further. So we take a triplet and we take a G chord, okay, and we would be strumming triplet, yep, triplet, two together, triplet, triplet, and we're using the syllables from the words triplet, triplet, to give us the strumming pattern that we want. So we're strumming each time we hit the syllable, triplet, and the strumming pattern we want would be down, up, down, triplet. Okay, so that being said, let's now take a look at the swung eighth note and see how that looks, see how it's written down and see where it comes from, and then we're going to come back and learn how to play it. Okay, so let's take a look at the triplet and let's take a look at the swung eighth note and see how they're written down. So here on my trusty whiteboard we can see we have a triplet pattern which you'll be familiar with, okay, and we've got our little syllables at the top here, triplet. There we go. So we've got triplet, which we're used to playing. That's how the triplet looks. Now if we take a look on this one over on the right hand side, we can see it looks somehow familiar but something's missing. Okay, what's happened is we're missing, if you will, the middle, the p. This guy here, the middle one here, is now vanished. Okay, he's gone. So what's happened is we've put these two guys together. The first and the second one come together and they are contained here in this very first pattern here, this very first part here, which we're calling trip. Okay, the third part here is this guy at the end. So we can see it's an eighth note pattern here. This is an eighth note with the tail, and these two guys put together have become a quarter note. Okay, so that's how a swung eighth pattern looks like. So what we do is we simply, as a way if you will, we've condensed these two patterns into one, okay, to get to here. We're going to condense these syllables, the trip, per, let. We're going to condense these two into the syllable trip. So we have triplet, okay, triplet. So this rhythm pattern here would sound like triplet, triplet. Okay, this one on the right, the swung eighth note, sounds like triplet, triplet, triplet. And you can hear by doing that, triplet. This first one holds out a little longer before we get to the last part of the syllable, before we get to the let. So we have triplet, triplet. Okay, so that's how it's written down and that's how it breaks down. So now let's come back to our guitar and see how we're going to learn to play it. So understanding how it's written out and how we're going to abbreviate the two notes into one, and we're going to abbreviate the two syllables, the triplet, into triplet. Okay, let's look how that works out on the guitar. So we're going to take again our G chord, okay, and let's just play a triplet so we know how it sounds like. We have triplet. There's our triplet. The swung eighth notes, where we put the first two together and the first two syllables together, we end up with triplet. Okay, down, up, triplet. So I put two together, I would have triplet, triplet. Okay, triplet. And then two together, triplet, triplet. Okay, and our metronome will be clicking 1, 2, 3, 4. Triplet, 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 triplet. Although you can't see it, the most important part of our rhythm playing is happening probably on the floor with my foot, and my foot is tapping the 1, 2, 3, 4, and the first strum beat, trip. On that part, my foot is hitting the floor. Triplet, 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 triplet. So that is a swung eighth note. So take it slowly and just break it down. Just learn to play one, triplet. You get this idea of these syllables, triplet, and your foot tapping along with it. Then put two together, triplet, triplet. Put three together, triplet, triplet, triplet. Okay, and then with the rhythm exercise you have in the book, you can start then putting those all together. So that's helpful to you. If you have any questions, let me know, or we can talk more on our lessons. Thanks so much, and see you soon.